really enjoy Ben Horne's YouTube channel. I have done for years. I used to be cynical when I heard Ben talk about the first day funk. As a landscape photographer who fitted in shoots around family trips and snatched mornings and evenings here and there, I suspected he was talking nonsense. I was wrong. Conditions used to very much govern my success or failure on my photo shoots, but nowadays mind state is key. I'd planned to take the journey from Bristol to the Hebrides slowly and get in some good photography along the way. I even bought an inflatable kayak to explore the shore of Loch Lomond, but I had trouble staying in the moment and enjoying my pit stops. I'd imagined drone shots with me clean paddling into the sunset, but what I got was headwinds, slow progress, and a mistake that might mean no drone footage for the rest of the trip. The midges swarmed me in Loch Tula, crowds put me off stopping in Glencoe, and I managed to miss a temperature inversion on Skye by a couple of hours. I arrived at Tarbet late in the evening, and after a broken night's sleep I drove to a beach that I had thought about frequently since my last visit in 2021. My head still wasn't in it, but I hoped it would be soon. What a nice start to my time on Harris. I think I got a couple of compositions there that really worked, and it's just started misting rain, so I think I got in just in time. I started off today a little bit frustrated. It's funny what expectations can do to you. I came to Nisabost and I wanted to get the striated rocks in the foreground with, I think it's called Kippervel, someone correct my pronunciation. It's the really shapely peninsula on the far west of Harris. But it's a low cloud day and the top of Kippervel was obscured, and I started getting a little bit frustrated. But then I explored a little, kind of relaxed for a second, and started working with what was actually there rather than what I wanted to be there. In the end, I decided that the striated rocks were a powerful enough anchor to make them the subject. I still used the edge of the peninsula, but just a triangle of it, just to point your eye back into the centre of the frame. I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the rest of the day photographically. The misting rain has come in, and that might make for some really nice conditions just to make faint outlines of the islands out to sea. I also want to test my drone today. It seems to have dried out, and if this misting rain clears up, I'm going to stick a new battery in it and send it on a little test flight. Well, it's amazing how refreshed you can feel after a shower and a tonic caramel. I'm down at Sgarasta. I've never been to this beach before. I always see pictures of sand dunes leading into Kippervel in the background, and I'm hoping that I can get some good conditions here. The peaks are occasionally showing themselves, so we'll see. Otherwise, again, I'll use the edge of the hill as some sort of lead-in line. It's always hard to know what to do when approaching a scene like this. There are so many potential compositions. You don't want to leave footprints through a potential shot that you might want to take. I approach situations like this methodically, using a process of elimination. I start wide and then move into the scene, discounting options as I go. Once I've found a composition that I'm fairly happy with, if it's worth it, I'll sit on it for a while and see how conditions develop. Granted, today conditions aren't great. There's no dynamic lighting, and the atmospheric mist that was around earlier has slowly dissipated. The tide is receding though, so I think I'm going to head down and do some beach combing and see whether the sea has revealed any nice sand patterns leading into the mountains in the background. The photos I took of the dried up river outlet at Sgarasta are nothing special, and I'm glad I didn't sit on this composition for very long. I was pleased with the graphical way I placed the elements and the tonal difference between the different coloured sand, an effect I exaggerated with a black and white conversion. I worked this scene for a while, but I wasn't sold on it. A bit more rain and this river outlet would be flowing, and perhaps even red with peat wash-off, and I decided to return on a future trip. The tide was still fairly high, so I explored the rocks at the head of the beach instead. I found compositions facing east and west, where the yellowing stone crop nestled amongst the grey rocks and created a lovely colour contrast. While Glencoe had been too busy, Harris was just that step further that put a lot of people off, and I enjoyed visiting at this more civilised time of year. September was good to me on Harris, from having warm showers still open at the campsite to talking to locals and getting my pronunciation corrected. I enjoyed the sociable side of this trip. Up on the rocks at Sgarasta, I had a chance encounter with a geologist who told me about the formation of Harris, and he pointed out some garnet inclusions in the rocks around my feet. While these might not be the perfect hexagonal garneted areas that the geologist has shown me, they're beautiful nonetheless, and I'm glad to have captured them accidentally in one of my frames. By the time I turned west to take a composition of Keppervale, the blue patch in the sky had spread, and I decided to go back to the car for some lunch and to sort out my gear. Fortified by my food and a bit of housekeeping, I stuck a new battery in my drone to test whether it had survived its swim in Loch Lomond.
What?
Feeling relieved, I returned to Nisabost to photograph sunset. High tide was at 10 p.m. that evening, and I hoped perhaps the striated rocks I'd scouted earlier would be getting lapped by water during the best light. I started low down the beach, taking photos of the sand patterns as they shifted with the incoming tide. As I retreated, new compositions presented themselves before being washed away. I worked my way back until I settled on my chosen rock. While the best light had been in the hours preceding sunset, I shot well into blue hour and made the most of my time in this beautiful spot. I like the visual flow of this image. Although the luminant green is dominant, it's not overpowering, and there's an asymmetrical balance to the hills in the background. While the shape of Tarency is more defined and larger in outline, the hill behind Luskentyre is made equally prominent by the diffused light threatening to break through the thick dawn clouds. I'm tempted to visit Tarency on a future visit to Harris. I think there may be some nice photos from there. The island featured in a few of my compositions this time around, but this one might well be my favourite. When I posted this image to Instagram and Facebook, I asked a question. What is the subject of this image? I've had various responses. A lot of people went for figurative subjects such as time and flow, but the most common response was mist. I like this. It speaks to the ambiguity of the image. Even seasoned photographers had to double take, as at first they thought they were looking at a cloud inversion. The indeterminate subject of this image might not be to everyone's taste, but it's one of the things I like about it. Often on Nisabost, the subject of the image becomes Keppervale, but this image showcases the beach itself. The striated rocks, the fierce mutability of the water, and the moody feeling of a deserted Hebridean beach. But what about you? Let me know in the comments what you think the subject is. There are a number of compositions I like from my retreat up the sand on Nisabost. Many of them are technically imperfect. One of the perils of shooting minute-plus exposures on an incoming tide is the potential for camera shake. For brevity's sake, I won't show you them all here. Those of you who are interested can follow me on social media, and I'll post them in the coming months and years. I found the colour control quite difficult on this beach. When I edit for colours here, I tend to favour a high-key register, with even the darkest tones sitting to the right of where I would usually place them on the histogram. At the moment, I prefer the leniency I have in a black and white conversion of these shots. With a monotone image, I can apply a lot of contrast and bring back all the drama I felt from this scene. I used to always chase sunset colour, but these days I favour more muted scenes. Nonetheless, I like the image of the boulder. The light came through at just the right time to create some real drama in the clouds above Keppervale. Although this was not the rock I had earmarked for sunset, I'm glad I waited for the tide to reach this lightning-striped stone. While I was focusing on 2-minute exposures of this scene, I'm happier with shorter shutter speeds, which add a texture to the water complementing the energy of the sky. A geologist on Sgarasta had come over hoping I was surveying the rocks. He seemed a little disappointed to learn I was a photographer. He asked unenthusiastically what I was focusing on. I said something about being interested in form, but this question always stumps me. I'm never quite sure why I do photography. In the moment, photography is a puzzle where I wrestle unruly elements into some sort of order. In the medium term, I take photos to see improvement in my skills over time. Overarching the whole endeavour is something else. Photography is a reason to be in beautiful places. I enjoyed Nisabost on this day. If I could pick one area of Harris to focus on, it would be here. Either shooting towards Keppervale, or in the other direction, towards the mountains of North Harris and Luskentyre. For the whole journey up, I'd been out of sync and finding it hard to enjoy what was in front of me. However, this one day on Harris would have been enough for me to go home happy. There's plenty more photography to come though. Please think about subscribing and tune in next week to see how my journey continues.